Welcome back to the Outlap podcast.
How we doing, dude? Racing's back. Excited to be chatting again.
It's a hell of a long break. That was my biggest frustrating thing when you've got a mid-season break that's larger than the summer break. But the one thing I noticed is, damn near every team on the grid brought upgrades. So that's the difference, that the factories weren't shut down during that period of time.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some cars looking real tasty this weekend. Most notably, obviously, the Ferraris.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think Ferrari looked strong down in Austin. And then, I think that was interesting stuff, like with the sprint and, full-blown race and the quali for each one of those and what that kind of shook out to. Yeah, interesting stuff, I think, generally. I'll tell you what, talking about looking tasty, what'd you think of the chrome on the McLarens?
Oh, yeah. I wish it would have been full chrome like the old livery, but it's so... for anyone that doesn't know, our brother works at Google. When we were in New York for Mom's birthday, I was like, Glenn, if this isn't already a thing, we should absolutely make it happen. It needs to be a chrome livery. Needs to be a chrome livery now. And then, little did I know, it was coming this season. And no, I loved it. I thought it was a great throwback, and they did it tastefully. I think the all chrome car would have been cool, but they did it well, and it was the most chrome they've ever done it. They've done a few different versions of this like chrome like sponsorship where they throw a lot of money at them for one race and do a more chrome focused livery, but I'm glad that they threw it back to not only McLaren's history, but with Chrome the browser, it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and I think, obviously being in Austin, which obviously is starting to become the Texas Silicon Valley of sorts, but yeah, I think, that was sweet. On the other hand, I hated the other orange car on the track this week.
That was the thing. I actually don't even know what the Alpine, like what were they actually doing a crossover with, because that it was such a bad livery and they already get no airtime. Like I never actually saw what the collab was for. So that shows you how bad that one was. The Deadpool livery that they did at least was like very clearly, okay, this is for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, so apparently, related to that, it was supposed to be like an Indiana Jones inspired livery, which I don't know why. Like I saw the Indiana Jones on like the nose, but generally it made no sense to me. And to your point, it's like you get no airtime and you're now another orange car. Like there's a few times I was like what? Like that doesn't make any sense why McLaren's in that pack. But yeah, it all worked out. But I don't know, man. What do you think? Let's start at the sprint. Yeah, give me your hot takes here.
The sprint I thought was a good race. It seemed like Max held onto his tires better than anyone else, and that's what it came to. Like it was not a tire management race. It was a push hard and hold on to them till the end. I think we saw a lot of guys really dealing with that. The Mercedes, most notably, really fell off during the sprint race and weren't quite able to hold their tires. And I noticed a big difference in watching the first 10 laps of the sprint race versus the first 10 laps of the Grand Prix. Obviously, there was the safety car that bunches the field up. Even with that safety car, the cars were closer in the sprint race. So, I mean, there is something to be said to where I thought the racing was good. I thought the racing was strong. And, Max kind of walked away with the victory, and Lando wasn't quite able to track him down. But that's 1 point at the end of the day in the championship, so not a huge loss. It wasn't completely written off, but
right.
I thought that in the sprint specifically, Carlos Sainz just absolutely hucking it on Charles Leclerc. Literally like 5 times in a row, hucking a dive bomb down the inside. I thought that was the hardest teammate racing we've seen all season.
Yeah, listen, man's leaving the biz, going to get replaced by Lewis Hamilton, and yeah, it's just like...
Well, not leaving the biz entirely, because he's going to Williams.
Ferrari biz, going to Williams, I know that. Yeah, so, like, I don't know, send it. Like, yeah, it's a sprint, like, might as well get your chops in, because, like, you're going to be playing, like, driver 2 strat, like, come full race, so if you got a chance, like, might as well send it, I would say, but... Yeah, man, I think it's good to see. I wouldn't say like a balanced pack. Like I'm not looking for like everyone to be competitive, right? I don't want NASCAR where we're all running the same car, but it is nice to see that like we're starting to get a legit like kind of 3 team kind of scenario, not for a drivers championship, but for like competitive races, right? Like Ferrari just picked up the dub. Like, you get Red Bull winning the sprint. You got McLaren, out qualifying. Now you probably would have lost. I think Lando probably would have lost that pole position had, they not put it in the wall during qualifying on that last lap because Max was seemingly going to put down another like crazy Max lap. But no, man, it's good. I think this is of the last maybe 2 or 3 years. This is some of the best racing. And excited for what's next. Especially, I'll be going to the Mexico City Grand Prix, and then Vegas coming after that, which I think Mexico
Triple header too, which is fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of new. They hadn't done that specifically with these 3 races. Mexico was kind of a weird stop off after Canada. It was kind of what it used to be. But I really like the way they have this North American calendar set up where it's 3 back-to-back races all in North America, all in normal times for us American F1 fans.
Yeah.
But back to kind of like the teams being tighter up top, this kind of is like F1 is cyclical. And so because we're coming to the end of these regulations, the maximum performance that these cars can get is determined by the regulations. And it's just like, you've got a graph going up and to the right, and, that starts to level off, and that's where the other teams are finally able to make that more of a competitive battle. Red Bull had such an advantage, for the last 2.5 years, but now we're finally seeing the same thing. And it was the same thing with Mercedes back in 2019 to 2020 to 2021. So it's not exactly surprising. And it's always like, F1 always kind of shoots itself in the foot because when we moved to these regulations in 2022, the racing got immediately worse just because Red Bull was so dominant. It was the same thing with the last regs with Mercedes. And it starts to tighten up. Right as it starts to tighten up, everything gets changed. So it's a little unfortunate, but that's the nature of the business. It's always been this way. It's frustrating as an F1 fan that wants to see good racing, but it's also I think the moves that they're making in the technical direction for it actually being a sustainable sport in the future, I think is a good thing. So let's get those dollars, let's get those engineers working on things that are actually going to trickle down to road cars.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, the power units in those cars are so complex that they'll never find their way into a road car. Biggest thing that excites me for like the next regs though is the sustainable fuels side of things. I don't know if I've talked about this with you previously, but there's so many internal combustion engine cars and trucks and large heavy equipment that is going to continue to need some sort of fuel. So let's put the most money in one of the biggest sports in the world and like really highly paid, very, very smart engineers behind this, because that's something that is going to keep all of the cars we own today on the road. We're never going to get an F1 power unit of today in a road car.
I don't know, dude. Maybe in a Subaru BRZ of 3035, we're going to get the Red Bull power unit. That'd be sick. Or we'll just buy one off Facebook Marketplace and do an engine swap into something.
Yeah, there we go. We'll put it in a Mini.
There you go. Or one of the K trucks. Want to put in one of the K trucks. That's the dream. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. Like, we've seen some of the stuff around like hybrid and regenerative braking all come out of like racing sports and F1 and things like that. So yeah, I think it'll be good to see some of this more sustainable fuel, because I do think generally as a consumer, like hybrid is going to be the way that we're going to solve most of our problems. I don't think we can go full electric, and Formula E is boring enough. But no, I think it's exciting stuff. And yeah, I think it's interesting as we look into new regs, right? It's like there's kind of like the investment, someone gets a power unit right, someone gets the aero right, and then everyone else is playing catch up and just like, what are they doing? And honestly, it's like, how bad did you get it wrong if they got it so right? And I think that's what we saw with Red Bull and kind of the switch up. What I think is interesting related to all of this, and as we start to close the gap, is like looking at Haas, man, where Haas is at. where we had like what they're doing, how they're kind of moving up, right? Sixth in the Constructors Championship ahead of RB, Williams,
It's like
Alpine, and Kick.
3 or 4 races in a row in the points.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think that's honestly interesting stuff. But that
Plus
does bring me
the
what?
Toyota partnership. Did you see that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really exciting for them because that gives them a true, strong technical partner. Like, it's the Gazoo Racing Division (GR) for Toyota that's partnering with them, and like they're very, very highly successful in other motorsport categories. Really, the off-road rally side of things, they're really, really successful. But I think that hopefully we can have an American F1 team that's a good representation and not the Logan Sargent of F1 teams.
yeah, yeah. Like Gene Haas is a different man, and the problem's there. I'll tell you what. So I'll sidebar here related to just racing generally. My F1 fanship, I feel like I like on a boat, but not sure who I'm rowing with, rowing for, or heading towards. And I'll give you why, right? So I got the start in F1 fanship probably back in like 2019 when we were working with an Aussie company, me and Nick. Got turned onto it, found the like pre-Drive to Survive Amazon McLaren kind of thing. Watched that, and I was like, all right, sick. Maybe I'm a McLaren fan. That was easy. And then they were just absolute soggy buns, just trash. I don't even know the drivers. It was Fernando Alonso, and I forget the guy. He's not even F1. He lasted like a year.
Stoffel Van Dorn.
Yes, Stoffel, dude. Yes.
I am somehow becoming an encyclopedia of F1 knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. So Stoffel Van Dorn, man, like he was in the mix. They were absolute cheeks. Zach Brown was kind of like doing his Zach Brown things.
That was when Zach Brown just joined.
Yes,
he had just taken over.
Correct.
2018 is when I believe he kind of got involved and actually got the job at McLaren.
Yeah, exactly. And so then there was like, okay, I'm a McLaren guy. And then I was like, you know what? Like, why did I just choose to be like a Lions fan is what it felt like at the time. Like, why did I just choose to like suffer as a new sporting fan? So I was like, okay, who else do I like? And then it's like, all right, well, Mercedes was at the top of the charts. Then it's Red Bull. And then I was like, I like Danny Rick. Who doesn't love Danny Rick, right? So being the groupie I was like, I'm a Red Bull fan. Like, I like the number 2 spot. Cool. They make the challenge. Hamilton wins his things, blah, blah, blah. Danny gets the hook. I hate Max. So it's like, okay, do I hate Red Bull now? And it's like, yep, I think I do. I think like I don't get on with them. So I was like, all right, where do I go next? And then it's like Lewis Hamilton is a investor in the Broncos with Condoleezza Rice. Go Donkeys. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm a Mercedes fan. But now Lewis Hamilton's leaving. I don't much enjoy George. Like George is like George honestly feels like a guy that we couldn't share a beer because he would ask for it in like a champagne glass or something. Like I just don't like he's unrelatable. He's trying so hard and he's just unrelatable. And like listen, he's probably got homies that rock sweet watches and dope suits and have estates, but like that ain't me. That's why I like Danny Rick. So now I'm like, who do I like? And at this point, I'm thinking about just being a Williams fan. I'm just like, maybe Williams is my thing. I don't know where I'm going to land there, honestly, but it's like, I kind of like Carlos Sainz. I kind of like Albon. I think there's like guys that like are good, but then they kind of got like the rug pulled out from underneath them for one reason or another. They have all this new money, so maybe they're like the up and comer that'll be fun to watch. Or maybe they'll just be at the back of the pack, continuing to manage their car with Excel spreadsheets and doing a terrible job and like having like what looks like an iPhone mount for their driver package. But
I'm gonna drop an analogy, and your fan journey is similar to Danny Rick's F1 driver journey,
dude,
and
yes.
He never should have left Red Bull, and you should have never left McLaren.
I know.
So well, then I can't feel bad for you because I'm an Allegiance guy. You know I am. I'm an Allegiance guy. I started as a fan with Lando, have always been a fan of Lando, and have always been a fan of McLaren. It's like
you
even
pick
when
that-
they were sucking.
It's like, oh yeah, like I love Tom Brady. Like you're gonna enjoy the entire character arc of
Back
a man
in the day,
peaking.
No, I remember being nervous as shit in 2021 when Lando had a chance to win that race in Sochi, and I remember being heartbroken watching him spin out of the fucking lead.
When he didn't put the wets on.
So it's like, and it was like, damn it, Lando, you fucked up. He knew he did, but I'm telling you, I've always had that allegiance, and like I feel like in all sports, it's like I've ventured out a little bit after a few players, but I've always been a Colorado sports fan, and it's like you should have went with your gut and stayed with your gut.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like now it's like, okay, like where do I like? Because then I was like, okay, I am a Colorado sports fan. It's easy. I'll put the stake in the ground. Like I'm a Broncos, I'm a Nuggets, I'm an Avs, I'm a Rockies fan. Like as bad as they are. But it was easy because I'm a Coloradan and I identify as, and so like we are associates of. But I am not a driver of a Mercedes. I don't have a chance to own a Ferrari anytime soon. McLaren's not my thing. So like, what do I do? What do I do? And I think I just go.
Or you go Haas and just root for American.
See, I agree with you, but then it's like
you drive a Toyota and you're American. But I'm just saying.
Yes, I get it. There could be the world, and it's Haas Ferrari, by the way.
Right now.
That's
I think changing in the future, and that's kind of a part of this deal. Is it's going to be like Toyota Gazoo Haas Racing, or something like that. They're eventually going to be dropping that, and then I also think long term the plan is to have a Toyota engine, but that's not on the immediate horizon.
Yeah, so it's like, but then you got like Esteban Ocon, which I don't enjoy as a driver, and then Ollie Behrman next year. Like, sure we can get on, and then like Gene Haas is kind of a turd, got caught selling stuff through the embargoes to Russia. Like I don't know, maybe just keep the politics out of it. But yeah, it is what it is. So like Williams is like, honestly, Williams feels like where George belongs, and just being like posh. And like okay.
Well, so like, back to you going to the F1 race this next weekend. What gear are you buying,
dude?
What gear are you buying?
Well, I already own. So all right, I'm like I would say of all of the merch that I've gotten that I've purchased myself, it's all been Mercedes centric. I do have. The parents bought us McLaren hoodies. I got a McLaren hat. I wish I could root for Checo in any way, shape, or form at his home race, but I can't. So yeah, I don't know.
I have a Red Bull hat.
Yeah.
From back in the day, Catherine's parents bought me a Red Bull hat, and they didn't know I wasn't a Red Bull fan.
Yeah.
It was just because they saw me rooting for Max in the 2021 season because Lewis was the incumbent.
Exactly.
Right? And so it wasn't really like that I was a big Red Bull fan. It was just like I was rooting for the little guy. Like I was rooting for not the 7-time champion.
Yes. Yeah. And so so I don't know. I have a friend here in Denver that's been trying to like pitch me on a Ferrari fanship, especially now that Lewis is over there. But I just can't get down with the Ferrari brand. Like the idea that like you can buy a car and then you like mod it and then they like
C&D you.
Yeah, they can cease and desist.
Hit you with a C&D.
Cease and desist because you're infringing on the brand, and it's like, you've sold me a computer. What I do with that computer, I was like, whatever I want. Like you sold me a car. If I want to put sweet wheels and paint a different color, but like that's not the contract you sign with them. So I think they're kind of stuffy old Italian folks. So I don't know. Right now I'm a working woman on the corner of F1 fanship. It's like, whatever tickles my fancy at the moment, I think. So I don't know is the answer. Williams, maybe, if I can find some good Williams gear.
I mean, there's going to be gear for every team, so you just have to choose. And so the way it was at Silverstone, which I feel like it'll be similar, it's like there's certain pop-up merch stands that are for all of the teams, and then there are also team-specific pop-ups that'll have more of that team's gear and have the more niche-y style stuff and have some different articles and stuff like that. And so the world is your oyster.
Oh, I know. Anyways, sidebar. That's where I'm at. So, whatever.
we wrapped up the sprint. Quali was what it was. Lando was on pole, but it was called a little early by a wreck by George Russell. Put it in the wall. George Russell ends up starting from the pit lane. All right, let's start off with turn one because the stewarding in the race was pretty frustrating to me as a Lando and McLaren fan. So there's always more lenience on lap one, but there was guys penalized throughout the day for pushing guys off track.
Yep.
And what did Max do on the first turn? Shove Lando wide, let Charles by, and I know where you're going. It's like Lando should have covered the inside, and I said the same thing. It's like he should have covered that off more, but still, he went completely off the track and pushed Lando off the track, right? Okay. So it's like, one, he should have gave up the position. Two, that's just Max doing classic Max shit, and it was the same thing when he kept going for overtakes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm with you there. I'm with you. So I think a couple things that Lando should have done better there. I agree. So that first turn one, is an uphill, off-camber turn to then downhill, like right-hander. He's got to shut that door, right? Now, does that lead to a classic Max like shunting into the back of him like they've done so many other times when someone like aggressively reacts to him? Maybe. And honestly, now that there's a fight, I was telling some of our friends that are
probably a better outcome than what ended up happening.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because then you lose what, 3 places right there, 4 places, pretty much.
Well, he went from pole to 4th.
Yeah, so he loses 3 places.
Shoved wide by him.
Yeah, and then the Ferraris make the moves, and he's like playing catch up. Then all of a sudden we got a much different game. But yeah, I think like hopefully this race opened Lando's eyes to the fact that like if Max has a competitive car, you have to be incredibly aggressive with the way. And I think if you go back to like the Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen stuff, you have to start to being able to identify that like what Max does is what Max does. And like, you're probably going to touch or be forced wide or something weird's going to happen getting around that dude or covering off against that guy. Cause like he knows that most people aren't as ballsy as him when it comes to that work. And that's why like, he ends up with Lewis Hamilton beached on top of his car, in races, and he's, smashing people in.
That in my mind, right? The 2021 incident at Bonza and at Silverstone was both guys not being willing to back down.
Yeah,
the one time we saw was the baby little thing where Lando got fucked in Austria way harder than Max got screwed there. And I think that maybe is what's holding him off. But it's unfortunate. Like, yes, he's a very good driver, but it is frustrating. And then going to the later in the race move where, again, Lando goes for the move, but Max then just steamrolls in and has no chance of staying on track. But because he pushes Lando off and then Lando passes him off track, Lando gets the penalty. Like that just it's bullshit. So then you're gonna have dive bombs and wrecks from here on out, pretty much in my mind. Like
100%.
And it's just like that's the precedent that's been set. If you have the inside, let off the brakes, roll off the track, and then you're completely fine if the guy passes you because he's getting a penalty. Like it was so frustrating the way it was stewarded. And I understand that it's the letter of the law. He was ahead at the apex and all that. But like when you look at what happened is Max got passed, got pissed that he got passed, and just went for a dive bomb down the inside and shoved him wide, knowing that he couldn't overtake off track, and he was going to have to let him back past. Which,
and he got the black and white for exceeding track limits. He got 2 other kind of warnings there. So it was kind of one of those things like if he got past. Like there's a variety of things that played into Max's favor there, and I think Max played his cards well, and again, I like it well enough, but then I do agree that like it was poorly stewarded because the other thing is like
there was guys penalized all day for pushing people off track.
Well, there's that, but it's also like if Max were able to keep it on track and Lando went wide because he tried to avoid a collision, maybe there's a little bit more of a case to be made there.
If both cars go off track, it should be a fucking wash.
Both were outside the white line by a mile, and it's like, God dang, like you can't let this man get away from it. Because then the crazy thing is, Lando passes him. If Lando passes him, same situation, which he honestly had an opportunity to do on a couple of the other laps. but just like
Just
played
what
it.
he's unwilling to do that.
Yes.
He's unwilling to just shove him off the track.
But then you saw as soon as Landau got out in front, he put 4 seconds on him,
And
picked up a
almost
5 second.
got
Exactly.
almost
And
got
so,
away.
So that's the frustrating thing is like honestly, I hope that doesn't change. Like I hope Lando gets a little bit more aggressive when he's in battles with Max because we know Max is like crazy, like he has sociopathic tendencies and would rather no one have a good race, or he gets beat, right? Like I think that's it. But generally, yeah, whatever. One like it is what it is. Call it what it is. Not great, but it is racing. That being said, not a lot of coverage the whole race on the Ferrari team. Solid race. Great race.
Yeah, just because he walked away with it.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to see for me. It just clearly, again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that the sprint was a proper sprint, that Carlos was just pushing the absolute shit out of it. But when it came to full race pace and race management, Charles just had the edge on him. And it also shows you the difference in clean air. Like when you can have
100%.
that clean air, he was able to manage his tires better than anyone else because he had no other variables to deal with, and just walked away. And that was the thing, is Ferrari brought a big raft of upgrades, and clearly they worked. On the other side of things, Mercedes also brought a brand new floor, ton of upgrades, and both George and Lewis are top tier drivers. They really are. And they both crashed in the exact same spot. So it's the second to last turn. It's a really high speed left-hander where you have to be fully committed, or you're losing a shitload of time. And so both of them went into the left-hander, got a snap of oversteer, caught it, and just got a tank slapper and just immediately started careening. George went all the way into the barrier. Lewis beached it on lap 7, or no, it was earlier than that. It was lap 5, and he actually had a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that tells me that was the car, though. In both instances, that's the car. The way it was identical snaps of oversteer that neither driver could even get close to catching. It was bottoming and kicking them out, or there was something going on. I really find it hard to believe that 2 top-tier F1 drivers have the ability to replicate the exact same mistake if that is driver error. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And I actually watched right before we jumped on here, I was watching some of the quali team radio when he's like I guess it was Hamilton sent it wide, and then it was able to with the runoff area spin and then kind of keep going on. He didn't end up in the gravel where ultimately they ended up having the wreck. And George had mentioned the same thing of hey, I lost the bass end on that area too. I just happened to catch it where he didn't. And then both of them had that. That being said, starting from pit, George had a great race.
Oh,
great
hell
race
yeah.
by George.
Yeah. And on that same note, Liam Lawson too.
Yeah.
Liam Lawson had a fucking stormer of a race.
And Colapinto as well, or whatever. Colapinto. Yeah. Honestly, I think he had a really, really good race. It's funny seeing him start to put together, he's kind of outperforming Albon. So it'd be interesting to see how he does in these another back-to-back races on where he goes and where he finishes. Because then you got I think an interesting, would you give up the Albon seat to him?
No.
And bring in Sainz, or would you just put Sainz and him together and you send Colapinto back down somewhere, or the reserve driver or whatever?
So I think right now, really the one seat that he could be in conversation for is the last Sauber seat that's left, the one that Mick is kind of in conversation for as well. That's the only one I really see him doing. Mm-hmm. Or having a shot at. Yeah. I don't see them backing off of Albon. I think Albon's obviously had a few tough races, and Colapinto's performed well, but not well enough to completely replace Albon. So if anything, I think Williams is trying to go find him a seat elsewhere to let him develop further. They also understand that Sainz and Albon, with the way it stands today, are going to jump ship like that if they get an opportunity to top team.
Yeah, 100%.
So they're going to have to continue grooming that talent. But I don't think with where they're at in their contracts, they're not going to be giving up. They're not going to be canning either one of them.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to the Red Bull seat. It's pretty clear that so first off, Yuki is technically confirmed for AlphaTauri / VCarb next year. Checo is theoretically confirmed for Red Bull, but the rumor is that he's retiring this week. He's going to announce his retirement this week at the Mexican GP. That's the rumor. And
Pause there. Do you think that is a
forced? Yeah,
yeah
100%. Yeah, shit, yeah. I think they gave him the option, and they said, "Hey, we know we just signed you, but unfortunately, we're not seeing the results we want to see. We're gonna either you can retire, and this is what that looks like, or we can pay you out of your contract and you get canned. You get a. I feel like that's what that was. Is it was
Same.
a little bit of control your own destiny. And if you're in that position, like, shit, yeah, I'll retire. I don't want to be canned. Like, yeah, I'm not firing. Fuck you. I quit. Like, like that's always the vibe. But no, I it'll be interesting to see if that actually like pans out into fruition. But at the very least, I don't think Checo's driving that second Red Bull this year or next year. I really don't. Because there was rumors around Danny Rick back in the day, and Danny Rick clearly didn't pan out. And now they're like, yeah, it's a straight up fight between Yuki and Tsunoda. Instead of just saying, Yuki and Lawson. Instead of just saying, oh, yeah, you two are going to be in V-Carb next year, Checo's going to stay in Red Bull, and Danny Rick's out, it's this head-to-head fight clearly for that second Red Bull seat right now. And I thought that Liam did a really, really good job, and Yuki did a really bad job. So not only did he just not have the pace and got overcut by Liam, then just spun it completely on his own.
Right.
As well as, kind of had some snafus in some battles with Alex Albon and Fernando Alonso, and so he really didn't have a good showing. And Liam's first race back since filling in for Danny Rick has a stormer from 19th to 9th. Is that what it ended up? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. It was crazy. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think, I think the more I become a fan of F1, the more I start to realize that, like, okay, all these guys are good drivers, 100%, not a problem there. There is pay drivers and there is driver drivers. And I think where I thought Checo probably fell more on the driver scale, I think we've seen, given their commitment, honestly, they threw away the Constructors' Championship with him in the car. Like,
yeah, that's not even a hot take. That's pretty fucking accurate.
Yeah, they honestly, with the way he was performing early in the season, they could have tried, but they were like, you know what? Like, I think when you look at some of his major South American sponsors, like Telcel and some other these folks.
And what's funny is, like, back in the day, obviously he was not a pay driver, but it's funny because of the notoriety and time that he spent in the sport, he now has these big ass names, and yeah, it's definitely held him in that seat for longer than if it was purely merit based. Absolutely.
Now, yeah, exactly. And I think when you look at some of like him leading the Constructors' Championship, and the cost he's had and the lack of performance, yeah, I think, like you said, I think we will be surprised if he retires, right? Like classic Peyton Manning after winning the Super Bowl and not just doing it right away and like dragging his feet for a little bit. But yeah, I think he's gone. I think here's an interesting one, right? So this is something I've heard a couple times. So Yuki has been closely tied with Honda for his whole career. Honda and Aston Martin are going to be teaming up. And so there's this idea
I brought this up to you back in the day. Yeah.
And so there's this idea that like Yuki will not get that Red Bull seat because they assume at some point they're going to lose Yuki to Aston Martin. And so I think you'll see another butt in that seat. I think you will see maybe Liam, maybe they give a nod to somebody else, maybe they pick someone else up.
They've got a kid, Isaac Hadjar, in F2 right now that was leading the championship. I don't know if he ended up winning it. I think they might have maybe one or two more rounds, but he's up there in the top. They definitely have some folks waiting in the wings. I think that's a very fair point, and I think that's actually the reason why Yuki has gotten absolutely no consideration for the Red Bull seat.
Yeah.
Up to this point.
Well,
but now they're at the point where it's like, okay, at this point we got to put the best driver we have in this second seat, because I think they realized that they lost the constructors this year because of Checo.
So here's, I think, the game they balance because of Max and who he is. I don't think they want a 2 driver 1 setup. I think they want a Hamilton Bottas. just a consistent performer.
Well, that's what made the marriage with him and Checo so good in the first place.
Well,
right?
But then he stopped performing. That's what I'm
then
saying.
He fell off.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like that. That's the marriage that I think they want. And so again, I think there's two things at play in the Red Bull camp. Max is moderately unmarketable. He's like kind of hard to like. It's like being a Raiders fan if you like Max Verstappen. Like, you know you're not liked, and like it is what it is. But like you revel in the fact that you're unliked and your team is unliked. If you bring Yuki up, Yuki is also a polarizing character. I don't like Yuki. People don't like Yuki. He's a hothead. He's got a loud mouth. I think he drives good at times and crazy at other times. And so I don't think from both a branding perspective as well as like a parody, like, do you think Yuki's going to be a guy that would be willing to give up a place and not bitch on the radio? No. Right? To a teammate? No. But like, I think you could find someone else in the open market that could, right? Consistent driver, puts it together, calls it good, whatever. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I agree. Long story long, I think you're going to see Checo out. I think you're going to see someone maybe come up either from the RB team or they pick someone else out. But generally,
I think it's very clear that right now it's Yuki or it's Liam Lawson that is going to be in that second. Man. Yeah, and I hope so too, because I've been a big Liam fan, and I don't know if I've ever shared this. Like how I found Liam Lawson was Alex Albon, the year he got canned from Red Bull, went into a lower GT3 style series called DTM. His teammate in an entirely separate car, they weren't sharing car or anything, it wasn't like an endurance series, his teammate was Liam Lawson. His teammate fucked him up. So this is Alex Albon, F1 driver, fresh off of a Red Bull seat that he got canned out of. And Liam Lawson, this little, like, I think he was 17 at the time, got like second in the championship. And just absolutely messed up Alex Albon. And so that's what threw me on to the Liam Lawson train, and I've been on it ever since. So he's a really likable guy, like on the exact polar opposite. He's a Kiwi. He's very personable. He he has like a YouTube channel that he like shares vlogs and stuff. He's a very down to earth guy. And so I think it would be a good fit. He's also so young and so brand new to the sport that obviously Max is not going to have an issue probably handling him pretty well. I think there might be a time or two where he's going to give him like a run for his money, as Checo has in his day at Red Bull. But to your point, he's going to be much more willing to comply and play the team game than Yuki would be.
Yeah. And I think, after all the Red Bull drama off track this year, like you literally can't put a guy who is known for like on track antics in a seat with another guy that's known for on-track antics. I think.
Could you imagine if you were just like the two race engineers sitting next to each other, if the drivers were Yuki and Max, and it just sounds like a 2009 Call of Duty lobby in their headphones? They're just screaming absolute profanity at their engineers.
Yeah, wild. So I want to take it to McLaren, specifically talking about like, so Ferrari thought they were going to be good at the Austin track. Red Bull, I think, was just trying to make any progress, and they did, and they looked fast again. McLaren knew this was going to be like a struggle with some of like the turn, I think you could see longer straights, faster corners. They kept the pace. It was some of that like more slow kind of driving
the slower speed corners is where McLaren isn't as strong, and it's really the medium speed where McLaren is really, really strong, and there's not a lot of medium speed on this track. It's either really high speed or really low speed. So that's what made, I think, their car struggle a little bit. With that said, I mean, a lot of people brought big upgrades. So it'll be interesting taking it to obviously a far different circuit in Mexico City and seeing how the cars perform there. Some small nuances with Mexico City. It's a higher elevation than here in Denver because the elevation is so high. Even though there's one of the longest straights on the entire calendar, they run their maximum wing because the air is so thin, they need the downforce.
Yeah.
They don't actually get as much downforce up there because the air is so much thinner. So on the high downforce tracks, McLaren has been their car's very efficient. in terms of downforce, right? Their downforce doesn't create too much drag, and so being it's that style of configuration circuit as well as a good amount of medium speed on this track, I feel like McLaren will be strong. And that's me being hopeful. I'm hoping that is the case, and maybe we see another like McLaren walk away win. But I'm interested to see how the other teams, specifically Ferrari, like Ferrari and Red Bull. I think Red Bull really fell off before this kind of 4-week break, and they came back firing. Like their car looked good again.
They were nasty.
It'll be interesting to see how both of those cars, because before the break, McLaren without a doubt was the best car. It's like I can't say that after Austin.
No, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I'll be sitting in the grandstands, like right at the podium. So it's like, a slower section.
You're going to hear the mariachi band.
Oh, that's apparently like very much part of it is like they're, that's kind of everywhere. And and then like, I think last year after the trophy ceremony, Calvin Harris played a set. So we'll give you a trackside update of what happens there. Cause I'm hoping to stick around to see kind of the champagne, hopefully not the Dutch national anthem, and something else. So yeah, pretty stoked to get down there. It's outside of the city. I don't know, like it's obviously being a dedicated track. Love that, but it's like pretty far outside of the city. So gonna be a bit of a nightmare, I think, getting out there, but looking forward to it.
Which it's a really interesting setup because it is still a street track though. Like it is very much still in the city. Mexico City is huge. Mexico City has more people than New York City. It's one of it's in the top 5 biggest cities in the world. So it's like, though you say it's far outside the city, it's like it's all relative because I'm sure you're like what I'm imagining of the track. It's like you're still surrounded by buildings. It's nothing like Austin, where it's quite literally in the middle of nowhere. A lot of 90-degree turns, a lot of walls right up to it. So I don't know all the nuances. I don't know I know there's parts of it that are dedicated, but isn't part of it also just actual streets?
I'll have to, like, honestly, I don't know. It's a dedicated track. It's definitely out there. The grandstands stick around like the whole bit. So I'll have to take a look at that. But all right. So looking at that race, I guess if you had to without looking at the odds, I got the odds pulled up. Without looking at it, who do you think is the favorite to win?
After like you're saying for Mexico.
Yeah.
I think that it's either Max or Lando as the favorite still. I don't think Ferrari crept up to being the favorite.
So who would you call it? Which one?
Lando, because of what I just told you, me being an F1 nerd, they're highly efficient downforce. I think it's Lando's the favorite.
Okay, so right now, even odds across FanDuel, DraftKings, Bet365, and then Caesar Sportsbook has Max having slightly worse odds. And then the only one that has favorable winner is MGM has Charles as like a slim favorite. So it'd be interesting.
I wouldn't want to take that bet. I think where Ferrari's at right now, like, yes, they had a very good weekend, but I don't think that you can expect one weekend to be now they're going to perform at all tracks, whereas I think McLaren has shown they're thereabouts. Same with Red Bull has shown they're thereabouts on most tracks. So it's like if I'm taking a Charles bet, I want it to have some pretty favorable odds, not him being the favorite.
Yeah, agree. The one kind of long, like the next long shot is Carlos. He's like plus 850 versus the other guys at about plus 260, 265, depending on the sports book. So sports books are damn good at what they do. But if I don't know, seemed fun to root for Carlos.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, it's like
maybe a 3-leg
one last hurrah in a top team, really. Like, we don't know if we're gonna see Carlos with a properly fast car ever again.
I know. Wild. Cool, man. Anything else? Anything else outstanding? You gonna get us a hot lap
I don't think
for
so.
Mexico?
Maybe. Yeah. We'll see if I can whip one up. I haven't done one on the new game. I was doing it on 24 or 23 before, and I haven't done one on 24, so I can maybe give it a rip. But no, I think we talked about it a little bit for the race. Bring some binocs if you can. I wish I had some binoculars. Like, things are just inherently farther than you think they are. Get the radio headset, because you'll try and watch F1 TV on your phone and the signal's not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So get the headset. It's, I don't know what it costs, but definitely worth it, because the one thing you'll notice is you end up watching the screen a lot, even being in the stands.
Yeah.
And there's that little bit less connection with what's going on with the whole race, because you really get like a flash of it.
Right, right.
And so I think that was the one thing that I feel like I did wrong. I didn't get the headset, and it led to me maybe missing some things that happened on track, not necessarily being able to get that full experience. Buy the merch. There's probably some sweet Mexico-specific merch, but do it, because I wear my McLaren gear all the time, and take all the photos.
Yeah, dude.
Take them
so
all.
I'm trying to see if I can pull this up. So I'm in the grandstands. That is, I think technically it's like section 14. I'm not sure what turn it is on the track. Let me see. It's like 1-2. Like, is that right?
No. If you're in the stadium, that's at the tail end of the track.
Yeah,
so that's probably like turns like 17, 18 or something like that. There's a lot of turns.
I was just looking at the map when they were. It's okay. Never mind. They were doing the old versus the new and some of the upgrades there. But yeah, so like, it's like the slowest portion of the track. Looks like it's...
Yeah, so it's turns 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the slowest corners outside of Monaco on the entire calendar.
Yeah, so while I'll be stoked to see that, there'll be like 3 screens, and then honestly, the amount of track that we get to see, I don't know if the binoculars will be of use, just because like we only are looking... Like, we're looking at that corner, and the rest of the track is behind us, above the grandstands.
Are you planning on going to like the practice sessions and the qualies and all that?
I'll probably pick up. I gotta, we got 6 other folks with us, or 5 other folks with us, so I'll probably pick up maybe like a quali.
So the one cool thing that we were able to do in Silverstone, which I don't know if you're able to do at this track, is during all of the practice sessions and every session leading up to the actual race, if you have grandstand tickets, it's called like roving tickets.
Yeah.
Which means that during the practice sessions, during qualifying, you can go sit in any number of like anywhere around the track you want. There's certain grandstands that are held, but the majority of them are not, which meant like we ended up watching from like 4 or 5 different places around, and it allows you to see the whole track doing it too. If there's a specific part of the track where you're like, oh, that'd be cool, I look into it, because that made the practice sessions a lot more fun, because it was like part watching practice, but part exploring the track, seeing the other side, because these tracks are huge. And so we barely made it around the whole thing in the 4 days we were at Silverstone. That would be my suggestion, is look into that. That makes the practice a little bit more fun when you're not in the exact same section. Like, we went to our seats, found where the seats were, watched the very first session from there, but then after that we were bouncing around between all kinds of different parts of the track. I really wanted to see Maggots and Beckett's, which is the really high-speed section of Silverstone. So, yeah. That I'd say just look into that, because that was a lot of fun as well if you're going to go to any of those extra sessions. Yeah.
I'm looking. You said the merch. Apparently, like, I don't know if it was at Silverstone, but apparently there's a handful of bootleg merch that apparently is either really good or really funny, that I'm looking forward to seeing what's out there.
Well, I feel like there's probably, because it's the proximity to a city, the way that we see people selling T-shirts outside of Rockies games.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you can absolutely expect that. We didn't see any of that in Silverstone, but it's because it's so far out. Like, vendors don't go and set up outside the track. There are ones that do, but it's much more of a legit setup. It's not bootleg tees with like hilarious sayings on them. It's like official merch being resold.
Yes, yeah. I'm hoping for some like some silly bootleg merch, like the Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, like Step Brothers like picture, if you've seen that. So yeah, anyways. Well, cool, man. Excited for Mexico. I'll let you know how it goes. Give you some live trackside updates. And good talking. Glad to be back racing.
Hell yeah. Yeah. No, still a little sliver of hope that the Drivers' Championship goes down to the wire. it's going to take some solid performances from here on out from McLaren. Like, I think if Max finishes another race ahead of Lando, unfortunately, I think the drivers is pretty wrapped up unless there's a DNF with a Lando win. And that's the one thing we didn't talk about. There was some grumblings about some issues with Max's car during the race, and I was hoping for a DNF because that's what we really need if this drivers' championship is going to become a proper fight. Is we need a Red Bull DNF and a Lando win.
What about a Piastri shunt into a Red Bull? I don't know.
Senna style, baby.
Yeah, exactly. No, other scary one, I think, on like cars issues. There for a little while, I don't know if you heard like on the radio, Sainz talking about the fuel.
Yeah, that was
Squirrely.
sketchy. I was like, everyone was like, "Don't die, please."
Yeah, I know.
We don't want you to die. And then the Italians are just like, "It is fine. It is fine. Do not worry. We just drive through the fumes."
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, luckily Carlos Sainz did not turn into a spicy meatball, but glad he got through that. Didn't light on fire. Didn't have another Romain Grosjean ball of fire crash or anything there. So cool. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in, and another episode of the Outlap, getting you up to speed on all things racing.
Thanks for joining us.